Good evening, I'm John Higgins. This is PNG Tonight. Coming up, don't just observe, say no to corruption and its practices. That's from Transparency International. We have an interview with its chairman, Lawrence Stevens. Also tonight, we'll show you how the new Kagamooga Airport Terminal in Mount Hagen in the Western Highlands is being used, and the lights and celebrations in Port Moresby, the festive season at the Jack Piddick Park. Papua New Guinea is still ranked as one of the most corrupt nations. But Transparency International says there is light and optimism ahead to reverse the trend. Chairman Lawrence Stevens says laws and the institutions cannot reduce or eradicate corruption. It must be the people. We must collectively say no and fight corrupt ways in our systems. Here is an interview I conducted with Mr. Stevens a little earlier in the other studio. Thank you, Lawrence Stevens, for talking to us. Making time available, we thank you for that.
John, pleasure to be here.
Okay. Corruption is in the news again. It's something that's always been part of this country. It is there. It will always be there. As chairman of Transparency International here, how do you read it? What's your take on it?
John, I'm glad that you said it's always been here, because that's important. Some people sometimes make the claim that it started after independence or that it started even later. In reality, corruption is something that's part of humanity. It's all over the world. And it's what countries do to address corruption that makes a difference.
So we may have speeded it up after independence, did we?
I doubt it. I doubt that we speeded it. It was just different structures came into playing. But there are things that became quite worrying. People did start to accept things that they wouldn't have accepted if they'd understood it before. We've got a challenge, big challenge, and that's clear. But don't let us think that it wasn't there in the past.
All right.
It's an ongoing challenge.
Okay, Lawrence, we have some of the best laws, proven laws in this country, and they address their law and order situations, corruption in other countries pretty effectively. We have not been able to do that. Why?
Again, similar thing. It depends what the country puts up with. Some countries don't put up with a situation where the water doesn't work. Other countries just say, oh, well, this is how it happens. And so they don't make the water work. Similarly, with policing laws, some countries simply will not accept bad behaviour or illegal behaviour. Other countries lose the will to make sure that people who commit crimes face the law. And unfortunately, there appears to be that problem here, where impunity seems to be available to far too many people. Too many stories around about people who have stolen, people who have accepted bribes, and not enough attention paid to actually bringing them and making them accountable.
And in the process, millions of kina goes into corrupt ways, and we've accepted it.
Yes, actually we've heard even more than millions. It comes into billions. And the Prime Minister himself, and Francis Owesa at one stage, pointed out that just in trust funds alone, over 8 billion kina has gone missing, and that hasn't been able to be traced. And if you put that back, John...
why isn't anybody in jail for this?
That's the challenge. Why? And that's where the system, we hope, will continue to kick in. But you see good signs. You see the Ombudsman working, even though you complain at times, you see them working. You see the police very bravely doing their work, continuing with huge backlog of cases, working, and every now and then you hear of yet another person being asked to face the courts. And then you hear of court results. So,
well, they go to court, Lawrence, but the convictions do not correspond to the number of cases that we hear about, and that is always a worry. Okay, leave it at that, but let me go on to ICAC. Will ICAC work in this case?
Well, again, it's a bit like what I said about the water. If you make sure that the things needed to make ICAC work are available, then ICAC can work. Story around the world is that in places where the systems work, where the courts work adequately, where the police work adequately, etc., that story is one where you can see ICAC surviving and doing extremely
Singapore
well.
has a very good ICAC.
Hong Kong, Singapore has a very effective anti-corruption movement, and in Hong Kong they actually have an ICAC.
We learn from them.
And they're very effective because they've got effective systems. Our problem here is we're worried that our systems are not sufficiently effective. We need some work on that.
Why aren't the systems working?
'Cause
Again, they're supposed to be the best. It's individual, it's people, it's us, isn't it? Is it culture? Is it the way we are, our nature?
The problem being that we don't collectively stand up and say, enough, this is not going to happen. We are not going to accept such a cutback in the court's budget. We are not going to accept this sort of behaviour by officers of the law, police officers or others. We are going to refuse to pay bribes, all these things that add up to saying we're going to make sure that our country is cleaner.
Yes, in other words, Papua New Guineans as people together, all of us together, are not saying and doing enough to say we've had enough of corruption.
That's right. And if you don't have individuals taking charge, standing up, supporting those who are brave enough to come out and say things, then you have a problem. Okay. And you see the same in the street. If you have one person who makes a scene when there's a problem taking place, other people might come behind. Often they just watch. Yeah. It's when the people start to support.
Like let it go kind of thing, and more to happen, so that they enjoy watching it.
Yeah.
TI, how are you? Are you effectively doing your work?
If we could claim that corruption was well and truly on a downhill slide, we could say we're very effective. We can't claim to have fixed the nation's problems, but we are, we believe, effective because people are asking questions more. More people seem to understand what corruption is. We're involved in things that are making a difference. The school-based civic education program, the youth democracy camp, the annual walk against corruption, and of course, most recently, the Open Parliament program, which involves us with European Union and the Speaker in opening up Parliament, in making sure information's available. Those things are all positives. Those are the things that give us hope for the future.
Yes, okay, if you keep at it, a mechanic says a rusty nut will not turn until you oil it, and keep oiling it, it will turn at the end. That's what they say. As chairman of the of TI and of the board of the organization, have you had any threats from anybody about your work that you might be treading on them, on their toes? Let's be honest, have you had any threats?
There have been comments made that I have taken to be threats, put it that way.
Okay.
No one actually ringing up and saying, look out, mate, but comments. And there's one of the problems that happens in Papua New Guinea also is that people react to those comments and start to be fearful. The proper reaction, I think, when a dog starts barking at you, is to let the dog know that you're not going to run just because he's barking.
Okay. Well, he's barking because you might be doing something. That's why there are reports and people are talking. We are running out of time. Lawrence Stevens, thank you for talking to us.
John, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Lawrence Stevens, Chairman of Transparency International. A little background on TI. It was established in Berlin, Germany in 1993 by a group of bankers who saw corruption in the banking system and wanted to do something about it. Papua New Guinea decided to embrace TI in 1997. Our initial frontmen in the fight against corruption were the late Kipling Oyari, the late Sir Anthony Siaguru, the late Mike Manning. And then it was Peter Aitzi and now Lawrence Stevens. Founding directors of TI are Dame Meg Taylor and Richard Kassman. When we return after the break, the refreshing new look of Kagamuga Airport in the Western Highlands province.